how they do contribute to their communities, and the place of the determinants of health, broadly speaking, in the whole achievement of health per se. Beyond healthcare. Healthcare is obviously important, but the community work that people do in acting on the determinants of health are equally, or in fact more important as well. So that's definitely part of this as well. So soon we'll be honoring our 3 award finalists and the 2013 award recipient. We'll hear their stories, and then we'll also invite Paul Schmitz, who is here to speak to us and share his insights on leadership. And you might have seen his book over there on the table, and maybe met him already in the reception we've had before. Now, following these formal proceedings, there's an opportunity to continue to networking. So once the proceedings are over, we really encourage you to stay. The bar will still be open, and the opportunity for people to continue to connect. And certainly after you hear some of these stories, I'm sure there'll be more opportunities to make connections to things that are going on in their lives and their communities as well. We're pleased to offer a simultaneous interpretation translation, so it's available in French and English if necessary. Portions of the program will be in French, and one second I'll introduce Jean, or maybe I'll introduce him right now. Jean-Pierre Girard, who is also one of the panelists, and also a new director for Health Nexus, and he'll be providing some of these introductions and closing in French for you. This is being broadcast live online, and so get in front of the camera if you want to be broadcast live online. Please set your phones to silent if you must have them on, and we'll turn them off if you can. But otherwise, again, welcome, and I'll turn it over to Jean-Pierre.
Ravi du temps que nous allons passer ensemble ce soir. C'est un événement qui concilie à la fois de la dimension conviviale et aussi une dimension un peu plus réflexive, donc avec la présentation que nous allons avoir par Paul Schmitz. Donc, dans un instant, nous allons souligner nos 3 finalistes et aussi, évidemment, la récipiendaire du prix 2013. Entendre parler de leur histoire, de leurs résultats, de leur action dans leur communauté. Et, comme je vous l'ai mentionné, donc la présentation de M. Schmitz sur ses idées liées au leadership. À la fin du programme officiel, nous vous encourageons à prendre quelques temps pour échanger, pour parler avec nos gagnants, nos récipiendaires et, dans le fond, résoudre. Donc, comme l'a mentionné les deux, nous sommes heureux d'offrir une interprétation simultanée. Il y a des parties du programme qui sont en français et d'autres qui sont en anglais. Donc, le programme est l'objet d'une diffusion en direct en ligne. Nous souhaitons la bienvenue à ceux d'entre vous qui nous regardent en direct ce soir. Et on vous demande aussi de conserver vos téléphones en mode silencieux, donc pour éviter d'avoir des choses parasitaires de la soirée. Donc, merci beaucoup.
Hi everyone, my name is Carla McFarland and I'm here on behalf of 3M Canada. First of all, thank you very much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. And on behalf of 3M Canada, thank you for joining us tonight. At 3M, we have this long history of innovation, but really what we do for our customers is we're solving problems. But, well, of course, that's really important to us as a business. What's also very important to us as a business is partnering with amazing organizations that are solving the problems in communities across Canada. So while we're focused on solving customer problems, like how to make an airplane lighter using tape instead of nuts and bolts, or how to keep windows on a high-rise building with, again, tape. Very simple. It seems very simple, but our scientists have worked for years and years and years to create pretty much 55,000 products Well, that's a very, very impressive number. I think what's most impressive is the 100 3M products that each of you would have interacted with just today, just by being regular people who live in Canada. And so that kind of proves the extent to which we're solving problems in the communities across Canada. But of course, there are even more important problems than making airplanes lighter or keeping windows intact. There are real community problems, and so we're really, really proud to have partners, especially in the areas of education, health, and the environment, that are out there supporting and even doing the problem solving themselves. And one of our great partners is Health Nexus, and we are thrilled to be here this afternoon or this evening to honor some of Canada's greatest problem solvers. So looking forward to it without further ado.
Thank you, Carla. My name is Suzanne Schwenger, and I'm Manager of Health Promotion at Health Nexus, and I'm standing in tonight for Barb Willett. Bonsoir tout le monde, je m'appelle Suzanne Schwenger. I wanted to thank, first of all, Carla on behalf of our R&D and the whole Health Nexus team to say how thrilled that we are at Health Nexus to partner with 3M. It's just been a wonderful journey, and we're still all together. And to have had the opportunity to present the 3M Health Leadership Award for the past 3 years. So this is a huge honor. We deliberately designed this award to focus on leadership and not to focus on initiatives or programs. And that was because we really believe that to make a truly lasting change on the factors that do determine our health, such as employment, income, education, housing, food, or inclusion, we need the best possible public policies, the best possible programs and services. But really behind all of those initiatives to really make a difference are the leaders in our communities. And these are the leaders who work tirelessly behind the scenes, together with others in collaboration, to instill commitment, to share a vision, and to take risks. They are the people who see every obstacle as an opportunity. And these are the people who are really inspiring healthy change and leading healthy change right across our country. And as you can imagine, selecting such recipients is not an easy task. And coming up with this list of this year's winner and finalists was not easy. And I want to tell you a little bit about the process that we go through when we are selecting. So we have a national jury panel, and some of our panelists are here with us tonight. So if you are here, I'm hoping that you can just give a little wave so people can see you. It's a national panel with expertise in leadership development, determinants of health, and healthy communities, among many other skills. So I know we have Trevor Hancock who's here in the room. Trevor, can you just give us a wave? There's Trevor. Trevor Hancock is a consultant and professor, senior scholar in public health, School of Public Health and Social Policy at the University of Victoria, with a whole career of expertise which is ongoing in the area of healthy communities, healthy cities, and health promotion. And we're just very fortunate to have Trevor with us here at this time and also on the panel. Connie Clement, who's not here tonight, is the Scientific Director for the National Collaborating Centre on the Determinants of Health, which is located in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. And she's a member of the panel, but not able to be here tonight. Jean-Pierre Girard, who you have met right there, and he's just waving again. He's a consultant on public health and community cooperatives. He does work both, he's from Montreal, he does work both nationally and a lot of international work in the area of cooperatives and social enterprise. And he has recently joined the board of directors of Health Nexus, so we're very, very fortunate. Martin Itzkow is here. There's Martin at the back. Hi. Martin is a social entrepreneur, a social innovator, and has contributed to the creation of many civil society organizations, including the Community Leadership Network and Leadership in Winnipeg. And I really hope that during the break, when we're finished the formal proceedings, you get a chance to chat with some of our panelists, an amazing group of people. David Hay, who introduced, kind of kicked things off tonight, who is, where's David, at the back. He is the principal of Information Partnership, a research policy and information management consulting business, and the president of Health Nexus and chair of its board of directors. And So David comes from Victoria. So we've got panelists kind of representing different parts of the country. Wayne Helgeson is here tonight. Where's Wayne? There you are. Hi, Wayne. Wayne is the recent CEO of the Social Planning Council of Winnipeg and current chair of the board of the Canadian Council of Social Development and a board member of Raising the Roof, Inc. I'm going to hear a little bit more about that later. Noor-Din is our past recipient. He won the 3M Health Leadership Award last year. Where's Noor? There he is. So Noor is an engineer and a social entrepreneur. He's the founder of Human Endeavor and the recipient is, as I said, of the 2012 3M Health Leadership Award. And I really hope that you'll get a chance to chat further with our panelists. And I want to say that they had a very difficult time this year. The caliber of nominees was very, very high, and there was an incredible depth of leadership that came forward in the nominations. If you would like to learn about each of the nominated candidates, we have all the details on our website, and we'll follow up with you with some of those links so that you'll have a chance to really explore all the range of leadership that came forward in the shortlisted candidates. The panel reviewed the nominees and looked at 4 main criteria of leadership. So under that, they looked at inspiration, innovation, and community impact, and then they looked at the whole blanket of leadership overall under that umbrella. And so this year, they came up with a short list, and then among that short list, there were 2 nominees who stood out in particular. In addition to the recipients we're going to be recognizing tonight, 2 nominees stood out in the screening process that we decided to recognize in a special way tonight, and I think you'll understand why. One is a promising, emerging new leader, and the other has shown leadership in his sector by working outside of the box. And I don't think that either Christina or Terry are here tonight, but I will just speak about their work because I think you'll find it really interesting. Christina Buron, who is having a special mention tonight for emerging leadership, is a community leader for children and families in northern Quebec in James Bay. And she has focused by working in her northern community, by working really upstream to try to bridge the gulf between the Prix community in which she lived and the non-Prix populations, and has undertaken a whole community mobilization process. And because of that now, there's a much greater cohesion in the community is working much better together, and she's a young woman undertaking this initiative, and so we really wanted to recognize that kind of emerging leadership. The other special mention we wanted to tell you about tonight is Terry Thompson. Terry is a police officer in the Niagara region, but he wasn't always wearing what we would consider the traditional police officer's hat in the work that he was doing when he was building partnerships. He is Detective Sergeant Terry Thompson, but he's also Terry who works with at-risk youth on substance misuse prevention, and he had sort of gone through the doorway of enforcement and instead ended up being much more on the health promotion side, working with the community, stepping outside of that police hat to collaborate with others across the community and to find solutions that have had a long-term impact on prevention, as including working on Canada's first prescription drug drop-off initiative. So we're giving him a special mention tonight as well. And we also wanted to mention some shortlisted candidates who are joining us here tonight. Tracy Ford, who's joining us on the virtual live feed, and Catherine Ndofaka. Where's Catherine? There's Catherine, who's sitting in our audience, and she is here joining us from the Niagara region. And we wanted to give a special thank you and welcome to you for being here tonight and to recognize all of your leadership. So let's have a hand for all of you. So I think without further ado, I wanted to call Carla up so that we can start to get into the Health Leadership recipients for 2013.
Make sure I do all of these stories justice, so I hope you don't mind if I just read out the stories. So first of all, it's a real pleasure again to introduce the finalists for the 2013 3M Health Leadership Award. Darcy Farlow has been working to improve the health of communities for nearly 3 decades. She has an inclusive leadership style that cultivates mutual respect and empowers others to believe in themselves and to achieve results. Darcy has a deep knowledge on how intersectoral action can impact social determinants of health. She's mentored community leaders throughout the province and has brought her skills to many projects in the Waterloo region, particularly in the areas of safe neighborhoods and food security. In her role as chair of the City of Waterloo's Safe and Healthy Communities Advisory Committee, she worked with others to co-create an innovative decision-making lens so that all city decisions are reviewed for their broader impact on health. Darcy.
Acknowledge this wonderful ceremony, thank all of you for this. I also want to say to Carla, I did interact with one of the 3M products on the way here when I got in the car and found cat hair all over my pants. We stopped at Home Hardware about one of your products, so there you go. I'm hair-free here tonight. I am going to take just 30 seconds though to say how it's wonderful, what a wonderful and joyful privilege it's been to be a facilitator for all of these various healthy communities initiatives that I've worked with over the years. And sitting right in the front row is my cheering squad. And so I just wanted to note that these are my mentors and teachers. And Joy Finney, who's in the second row, Joy Finney is the coordinator of the Village Healthy Communities Coalition, which is the oldest, longest standing coalition in the province. And I was lucky enough to help facilitate that with Trevor. Where are you, Trevor? Trevor did the visioning part, had a great time in the morning, and then jetted off to Geneva and said to me, "You can take it over now." So luckily, I guess we did something right because it's still standing, and Joy is truly someone that builds relationships and understands that. So she is someone to really learn from. Colleen Cooper is very involved in active transportation and is known around the province. Laurie Strom has been my teacher in neighborhoods, in neighborhood activism, and that is the cornerstone of any healthy city. Kay Crawford works for the City of Waterloo, and she just gets community development. Whether it's a new student in the community or someone who's homeless in the streets, Kay is all about inclusion. And Alana is really the one that has led the charge in the decision-making lens with your placemaking in livable communities. And Susan and I, some of you know Susan Anderson, Barb Willett's sister, and Susan and I are working on a collaborative project in Perth. We asked them, "What do you like about your collaboration?" They said nothing, and the whole thing fell apart. But we're preparing it now.
These are fun things to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Darcy. I had the pleasure of introducing Sid Franco to the podium. I'll just tell you a little bit about Sid. For more than 30 years, Sid's inspiring leadership has had a wide and deep impact on the lives of vulnerable groups in Winnipeg. He's an associate professor of social work at the University of Manitoba and a volunteer in the community who offers his skills both as a researcher and a community advocate. He connects with the community and walks beside people, not above or ahead of them. And Sid is a tireless leader. He never misses an opportunity to improve the well-being of children, families, or communities. His leadership has led to key initiatives in the areas of social planning, youth homelessness, and child poverty. And I'd like Sid Franco to come up and accept his award.
And I'll be uncharacteristically brief. I want to say two things. One is that for whatever reason in my career, I had the privilege of recognizing strength in community, striving to understand it, and then trying to lead by supporting it. And I consider that a real privilege. The second thing I want to say is the best thing about this for me, with apologies to 3M, but the best thing is that I was nominated supported, and chosen by friends and colleagues who I respect tremendously. So thank you.
Victor Willis is an inspiring change agent who works to improve the lives of vulnerable people. As the Executive Director of Parkdale Activity Recreation Centre, the acronym PARC, in Toronto's West End, he's built bridges between neighbours, service providers, businesses, and all levels of government to serve the needs of marginalised community members facing poverty, homelessness, and mental health challenges. Victor has a deep respect for community needs and an unwavering belief that everyone deserves dignity, respect, and community connections. He has a rare ability to help people who have lived relatively privileged lives understand the challenges faced by many members of the Park community. With Victor's leadership, Park has been able to address the broader barriers that lead to poverty and social exclusion, and share the responsibility of building a healthier community for all. Please join me in welcoming.
Of course, Darcy and Sid have said, of course, what I was going to say, no. Of course, but what I noticed about all the leaders, and it's a real humble experience to have been nominated, and I can't thank you enough. The nomination was taken forward by one of our community partners, George Brown College. I've got a great team here tonight who are part of what I think are the future of doing community engagement, community work in Parkdale beyond. I've got board members here, so I'm very well supported by people who have allowed me to be able to take some of this forward. The funny thing about awards like this is that often, you stand up here as the recipient, but really it's all of those folks behind you who have done amazing work, and the members of Park and the community around in Parkdale is an extraordinary place, and it's a place that understands that it's not about getting ahead, it's about helping those around who in fact are part of this community. And so it was with that understanding that we were able to do remarkable work in Parkdale and show that that's a model for engagement and for understanding that no one should be left behind. That's a key piece, I think, about the work and about the fabulous work that the other recipients have done. I really just must say I'm honored to be in such incredible company. And I also want to acknowledge that one of my mentors is here tonight, Barbara Williams, who does incredible work around the world. And to be able to have her here and to be able to guide me as a practitioner of trying to understand how to engage communities is a great honor. So thank you so much for this. And I just want to say as well that our administrative person, when I got the basket of 3M products, I gave it to her and said, "What would you like?" And she was thrilled to be able to go through it and get amazing stuff. So thank you so much.
All right, so thank you very much, and please join me again to congratulate all three of our finalists. Now, again, it's a real honor to celebrate the award recipient of the 2013 Health Leadership Award. For more than 30 years, Jocelyn has worked with creativity and imagination in community development, believing that when we act together, we go further. At the heart of her work is the inclusion of all stakeholders, especially those who are most vulnerable in her Montreal neighborhood of Pointe-Saint-Charles. My French version would not be very happy. She has led community-based interventions to improve the living conditions of those who lived in poverty, including the Operation Populaire which engages community members in proposals to improve their living conditions and quality of life. Whether she's working with the community to protect a park, improve services, or find an alternative to a mega project, which we'll soon hear about, Jocelyn champions a vision of a healthy future that responds to local needs. Please join me in a big round of applause for Jocelyn.
First, I would like to congratulate the other finalists. I feel I'm in a really good company. I think this work is not always an easy work, but I think more and more people are getting involved in the development of their own communities. I would also like to thank my co-worker, if I can say, my community first. I want to share this prize with my community because this is not an individual work. It's a work we do with a lot of people, different origin, different capacities, but when we get together, we can create more than we can do alone. I want also to share this with my co-workers, if I can say, and the chair on community approaches and health inequality. We do like partnership research. Sorry, my English is not the best. I'm trying to translate. By the way, we have translated Opération Populaire d'Aménagement. We call it popular urban planning because a part of the community in Pointe Saint Charles is from Irish origin. So a third of our community are speaking English. I was saying that this work at the Chair on Community Approaches and Health Inequalities is a work that I've developed with Louise Potvin, who is the chair, in fact, and with 29 consultation local tables in 29 areas of Montreal. These are supported jointly by the Public Health Department, the City of Montreal, and Red Feather, in French we say Saint-Aide, since about 10 years, but there was, there's a coalition that has been developed and we are trying to support their work, studying the processes they put in place and the effect of their work. So I want to share this and with Chantal, the friend who is working with me and came with me tonight. But I think this is a collective realization and that's what I want to insist on. Thank you very much.
So we're just about to watch the video, which will do a much better job at telling Jocelyn's story than I will.
The history of Pointe Saint Charles is a history rich in diversity, adversity, and solidarity. Situated on the southern end of Montreal Island, the local economy has been in steady decline for more than 60 years. Justine Bernier, recipient of the 2013 3M Health Leadership Award, has been a fighter and a leader in raising the standards of health and community spirit in Pointe Saint Charles for more than 30 years.
I really love this area. I love the people here. I have many friends. And my family, my son grew here.
Jocelyn was drawn to Pointe Saint Charles in the 1970s by a desire to do more for society than just study it.
When I left university, I did some research and then I decided that I wanted more to change the situation of poor people. So I decided to go as an activist, if you want. So I was involved at the very beginning of the daycare movement in Quebec.
She came to Point St. Charles to work in a daycare center and then took a job as a community worker at the Clinique Communautaire Point St. Charles.
Poverty is the main determinant for health. And the population here still has a lot of economic difficulties. The level of unemployment is high. The level of single mother family is almost half of the family. So I think the center helps people not to feel alone with their personal problems.
She was appointed director of the clinic in 1987 and earned high praise for her commitment and leadership.
Je dirais qu'une de ses plus grandes forces, c'est sa capacité d'être à l'écoute des personnes avec qui elle travaille, de trouver les points de consensus avec les personnes qu'elle travaille, de rallier les gens à ces points de convergence-là et d'ensuite mobiliser ces gens-là vers l'action.
C'est une citoyenne qui s'implique avec d'autres citoyens. Donc, c'est quelqu'un qui va accueillir les autres citoyens et qui va comment je dirais ça, les aider à s'exprimer, qui va soutenir leurs paroles, mais c'est quelqu'un aussi qui va renforcer leur légitimité. Il y a des personnes qui ne sont pas habituées à ce qu'on les écoute, qui ne sont pas habituées à ce qu'on prenne en compte leurs idées. Ben, Jocelyne va les renforcer dans cette idée-là que ces personnes-là aussi ont le droit d'être entendues, ont le droit de s'exprimer, ont le droit de revendiquer les choses. Ces personnes-là ont des droits aussi.
But after 10 years as director, Jocelyne decided to leave the front lines of community activism to examine her work from a different perspective. She completed her master's and, since 2001, has been coordinator of the Research Chair in Community Approaches and Health Inequalities at the University of Montreal.
After 10 years of the direction of the clinic, I needed some general view of what I had done, like to make a sum up of my work. And I decided to come back to research because I feel that research is necessary to have a general overview of what's the use of community approaches and how could we do better.
Louise Potvin, a professor in the University's School of Public Health, established the chair and guides Bernier's work.
Our work is to produce knowledge, and knowledge is there to be transformed into practice. Instead of dealing with preventing disease, health promotion is really about how can we manage our resources better collectively to achieve better health.
As chair coordinator, Jocelyne conducts research, publishes articles, and mentors students.
She's a very special person. She's very active. She's very credible. She has a lot of knowledge, and she's very approachable. So that makes her certainly a role model for a lot of my students, I would say.
Though it has been more than 10 years since Jocelyne worked for the Clinique Communautaire Point St. Charles, she continues to live in the community and is still involved with a number of community organizations, such as Action Gardien, a collective of community action groups.
Jocelyne, depuis des années, c'est vraiment un pivot des mobilisations dans le quartier. C'est une personne qui est extrêmement impliquée, et ce, à plusieurs niveaux. C'est une personne qui a une excellente capacité d'analyse, qui a une vision de l'avenir du quartier, qui partage ses connaissances, son expérience, etc. C'est quelqu'un qui est tout le temps prête à participer à l'organisation de mobilisation, d'actions, des représentations au conseil d'arrondissement, la rédaction de lettres ouvertes, donc à tous les niveaux, Jocelyne s'implique dans le comité.
Jocelyne has joined many community battles, and more than one of those battles has been fought over the now abandoned railway lands. In response to community action, a recent development proposal for the railway lands was modified to include more affordable housing.
To have 25% of affordable housing when the policy of the city administration was 15%. It's a big success. So it's not that we will solve all the housing problems in Montreal, but at least it's a step in the right way.
As the recipient of the 2013 3M Leadership Award, Justine Bernier is being recognized as an outstanding leader who has made a significant contribution to the health of her community, but it is an award she wants to share with many.
All the work I did was never an individual work, was always a collective work. So I want to share this with the community and the people I'm involved with.
Thank you to our colleagues at 3M for making that video. This probably gives us a snapshot of just this much of the amazing work that Justine has done. So, merci beaucoup. I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker for tonight, and that is Paul Schmitz. Paul Schmitz is the author of Everyone Leads. I borrowed the book from the back table where you can purchase one of the books tonight if you're interested. Everyone Leads, Building Leadership from the Community Up. Some of you may have read the book. That was going from the top down. Let's come back up from the bottom up now. And Everyone Leads is a very inspiring book because as CEO of an organization called Public Allies, Paul has advanced the leadership of over 5,000 young adults to strengthen their communities, nonprofits, and civic participation right across the country. He founded Public Allies in Milwaukee in 1993, and he's been the national CEO since 2000. He writes and speaks very frequently on the subjects of leadership, diversity, civic participation, social innovation, collective impact, and community building. He's a faculty member of the Asset-Based Company Development Institute, and as a private volunteer, he was a member of the Obama-Biden transition team and was appointed by President Obama to the White House Council on Community Solutions. Paul was selected by the Rockefeller Foundation as the Next Generation Leadership Fellow and has been recognized by the Nonprofit Times as one of the 50 most influential nonprofit leaders in the United States. And he is a recipient of Fast Company Magazine's Social Capitalist Award for Innovation. And Paul is also the father of 5 children and lives in Milwaukee. He's made a very, very special effort to be with us tonight. And please join me in welcoming Paul Schmitz.
Okay, am I? Great. I always forget that part. Hi, everybody. It's great to be with you all tonight, and especially great to be with the honorees. Whoops, now we're getting loud. I'm too close to that. I just want to start by thanking Health Nexus for hosting me here, and for 3M for your sponsorship of this great event, and also of really sponsoring the recognition of such great leaders. It's my 4th time in the last year coming to Canada to speak in different parts of the country, and that's really been a blessing in the last year. And every time I come, being a typical American, I always try to find the slight nuances that are a little bit different. And when it comes to health, I think one of the coolest ones is your walk signal is way healthier than ours. Our American walk signal is a little like this. You guys have like a high stepper, and it's kind of a little thinner. And so it's clear that you guys walk a lot faster here, move better. You also have, I love the little credit card things they bring out to the table, whereas often, every time it happens, I'm always like, why are you bringing this machine to me? But in the States, it's great because they take your credit card out back, and then the next day you have like 500 charges on it, so it's great. And of course, you guys have health care, which is something we really like in America. And although I have to say that one of the things, we've entertained your country for years, and so we're very grateful that finally there's a leader in Canada that is inspiring comedy in the United States at a level unheard of in the past. And today he said that there shouldn't be publicly funded health care and that people can pay for their own health care. So we appreciate his contributions to the public dialogue in the United States. And as someone who supports publicly funded health care in the United States, even though we don't have that really, I appreciate his standing up for the issue because I think that he doesn't bring a lot of credibility. I just want to start by saying that, and I just want to say that, you know, when our host was talking about 3M making tape for airplanes, you know, I used to hold my car together with tape, and it scares me a little bit to think about tape in the planes, but I'm getting over that. And assuming the scientists know what they're doing, but I used to use 3M products to hold my car together, and it didn't work very well. That wasn't really about 3M. I think it had to do with my duct taping ability, things like that. Anyways, I want to just open with, I'm going to not tell the proverb, but there's a Sufi Muslim proverb that's, the moral of which is, you will only learn what you already know. And I found that's true so much throughout the work I've done. And I think when I read these stories, when I read Jocelyne's story, and she says, when we act together, we go further. When she talked about the collective, when she talked about working with people rather than leading them, and always listening to people and being part of the collective movement. When I read about Darcy saying that she's an inclusive leader that leads from behind to cultivate mutual support, mutual respect, and empower others. When I read about Sid's work connecting with the community and walking beside people, not ahead or above them, and recognizing strengths in community. And Victor's work, where he has an unwavering belief that everyone deserves dignity, respect, and community connections. And he talks about taking risks and trying things, learning from mistakes, and that leadership has to be nurtured. And so when I think about speaking about this idea of leadership to people who clearly are such amazing leaders, it's an honor to speak to all of you. I want you to know that I share these stories that I'll share tonight, not out of some notion that we're experts, but some notion of sharing stories that I think will relate to your own experience. I'd like to start tonight by actually asking everyone in the audience to take a minute, and I'd like you to think back in your life to that first time that you stepped up on a cause or on an issue or on behalf of someone you cared about. And I'd like you to think about that first time in your life you stood up for something or someone. And I'd like you to take a minute and I'd like you to tell that story to someone that you're seated next to. So we're going to take a couple minutes and I'd like you to share that story of that first time that you stepped up with someone seated near you. Go. have two volunteers among all these great leaders who'd be willing to share the story about the first time you stepped up. It's a quiet crowd up here. We got one. Great. Sam, if you could introduce yourself and share that story with you.
The story I had was, I'm Yasmin Schroff. I'm here at the White Book Friend. Just that, not so specific, but just being in university and being part of student council. I was at the University of Guelph, and I was representing the biological science government, and just started to realize that I had power and I could choose how and when we were spending our money and what we were doing as a student council and what I was doing as a representative for the other biology students. It was just that knowledge. It wasn't a specific incident, but it's pretty
Paul Foster. And my recollection is from grade 1, from Holy Rosary Elementary School in Burlington. And a classmate, Peter Mondieu, a short little guy. He was always getting beaten up on the schoolyard. And not that I'm a violent person, but I was teaching Peter to protect himself and stand up for himself.
That's great. Thank you. So I'd like to start today to kind of ground people in our own leadership journeys. Because when I talk about the idea of everyone leads, it doesn't mean that everyone should be in charge of everything. We want one pilot on the flight. We don't want to have everyone vote on where we should go. There's ways and reasons for things like hierarchy and organization and the rest. But the way that we think of leadership is that it's a muscle. And like every other muscle in our body, everyone has it. And it only gets strong with practice and exercise. And that first time we step up, whether it's to someone who's being bullied in first grade, or through student activities, whether we're in high school or college, whatever that first time is, that's when we start building the muscle. And everybody has it. And what I'd like to do is share with you some of the experience we've had about looking at leadership through the eyes of the 5,000 young people we've worked with across America. First, I tell the story of Biz Talbot Scott. Biz was an 18-year-old single mother. She had had her first child at 15. She was on public assistance, and she was at a community college when she came into our program. And Biz, in her own words, said she knew she was smart, but she had no idea of her potential. Well, her potential was vast. She worked at an after-school program, and most recently was one of the directors of presidential personnel at the White House. Most people don't look at a teen mom in community college and think White House lawyer. Peter Hoffman was a different type of story. Peter was 27 years old. He had a philosophy degree from college, which meant he was working at a deli. And he had cool sandwich names at his deli. And one day, one of our staff asked if she could hang a poster for public allies in the deli, and they struck up a conversation. And Peter describes himself as someone at that time who spent a lot of late nights talking about politics and social issues with friends, but never thought of himself as being able to do anything about it. Today, Peter is the CEO of the National Alliance for Mental Illness in Wisconsin, and one of that state's top disability rights advocates. And again, most people don't look at someone making sandwiches behind the counter and think there's a leader. That's what my work at Public Eyes has been for the last 20 years, is we found leaders in incredibly uncommon places and found that there's incredible talent throughout our communities. And what we find, as I said, is that we see this muscle all over, but it's not being used. And we think if we're going to create change in our communities, it requires us to help as many people as possible start to exercise those leadership muscles. The reason why I'm so passionate about this is that was me. I was someone who, in my teens, struggled with depression and addiction. I was institutionalized when I was 16. I was homeless when I was 18. This is all pre-bow tie. I always say that I had to wear the bow ties because I didn't think people would look at my past and take me seriously. And so when I started out in my mid-20s, I thought I was smart because I didn't want people to know that I had so many challenges. Anyways, but it was, in my life, it was some interventions in social services I received, but also mentorship and a lot of people were involved in helping me bring my life together. And I went to college later in life, and it was while in college that I started Public Allies, and there was no way when I came in contact with this idea and decided to start Public Allies in Milwaukee, where I live. I was a telemarketer for a small insurance agency, meaning I was calling companies to see if I could get the agents to go bid, and I was a gardener. And so I thought with all the experience I had from my legal activities, my insurance telemarketing, and my gardening, that I could start a nonprofit and somehow work. But I could have never imagined that 20 years later I'd be an advisor to the President of the United States, and that I'd be leading this network of over 5,000 leaders across the country. But it's that journey and all the ups and downs that have been along it that made me believe so much in what so many others can do. And I believe we don't do enough to engage others. Our definition of leadership at Public Allies is based on 3 ideas. First, that leadership is an action everyone can take, not just a position few people can hold. When we shift our thinking from the noun to the verb, we really open up the possibility of who can participate and who can act as leaders. The second is the core work of leadership. What do leaders do? Leaders take responsibility. Leaders own it. They say, I'm going to do what it takes, learn what I have to learn, work with whoever I have to work with to get this done. Leaders see a challenge and they think of a solution. They don't sit back and blame and complain and look for the problem. They're people who are constantly striving to see how do we solve problems. And that's the core responsibility of leadership. And the third part of the definition, which I'm going to spend most of my time on today, is about the values of leadership. Because we would argue that's the secret sauce. That lots of people step up, but the question is, who has the values to really bring and hold people together and work together for common good? And so I'd like to take these first two, and I'd like to tell a story. And it's a story a lot of you might know. It's a story rich in the history of my country, and actually the anniversary of which was last Sunday. And it's the Montgomery bus boycott, and the story of Rosa Parks. And on December 1st, 1955, the story that most people understand is that this tired seamstress, Rosa Parks, refused to move to the back of the bus. And as a result of that, a march began, and a young preacher named Martin Luther King came to leadership, and it launched the Civil Rights Movement in America. But that's a story that's often understood in America as a story of a couple heroes. But I want to tell the story in terms of how it actually happened. So let me start with Rosa Parks. Rosa had been a lifelong activist. Her husband, Raymond, in 1932, had been involved in a case that was actually financed by the Communist Party of America that defended these 9 boys in Alabama, the Scottsboro 9 they were called, who'd been falsely accused of crime. And it was his activism on that case, which at the time there were riots and lots of danger involved, was one of the things she fell in love with. Not long after that, she had joined the local chapter of the NAACP in Montgomery. And she had run to be secretary with E.D. Nixon, who became president. They were the first working class people to ever lead a local NAACP chapter. He was a member of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, which meant he was a butler on trade. And they led that local chapter for 12 years as president and secretary. At one point, we were president and secretary of the statewide NAACP in Alabama. Through her work, she got trained by the great activist and organizer Ella Baker. She went to trainings in Florida and Tennessee. And Ella Baker inspired her to create a youth council, and so Rosa Parks created a youth council in the local NAACP that met at her church. As a seamstress, one day she was working for Clifford and Virginia Dewar, who were the leading white liberals in town. And they were talking to her about the Highlander School in Tennessee, which was a school at that time that organized interracial workshops on nonviolent civil disobedience. And the Dewars raised money so that Rosa could go there for 2 weeks of training in the summer of 1955 on how to do nonviolent civil disobedience. And there she was trained by the great Satima Clark and Miles Gordon, who saw her leadership and corresponded with her right after she left and tried to stay in touch with her as a leader they saw very promising in the emerging movement for civil rights. A young black lawyer moved to town named Frank Lane, who was only 24 years old. And Rosa Parks immediately worked to get him involved in the civil rights struggle in Montgomery. And they had lunch every week. And through that, she got him engaged to be a lawyer focused on working on the civil rights cases that were emerging through the NAACP. Then in 1955, a young woman, 15 years old, named Claudette Colvin, refused to move to the back of the bus and was arrested by the police. And she was a member of Rosa Parks Youth Council. And some of the civil rights leaders thought, is this the case we should use to take on segregation? But the leaders decided she wasn't a sympathetic enough person. She was 15 and no one thinks kids are worth fighting for. And she had apparently resisted arrest from two burly cops, this 15-year-old girl. And there was a rumor she was pregnant. Rosa Parks fought for them to take her case. And they didn't take her case. Not long after that, Rosa Parks refuses to move to the back of the bus and gets arrested. She goes to jail. Clifford and Virginia Jordan and Edie Nixon go to get her out. And they go back to her house where they argue with her and Reagan about the idea of using her case as the case to take on the issue of segregation. As she thinks about it, she decides, yes, I'm willing to be the symbol, I'm willing to be the case. Edie Nixon calls Joanna Robinson, who heads the Women's Political Council in Montgomery, which was a group of African-American women who'd been calling for a boycott of the buses. And Joanna Robinson, who's an employee at Alabama State College, which was a historically black college there, goes to use, in 1955, the state-owned equipment at her university to print 15,000 flyers overnight on state-owned equipment in a state that sanctioned segregation. And Joanna Robinson mobilizes all these women to get the flyers out in the community the next day. Meanwhile, Edie Nixon contacts Ralph Abernathy, who's the pastor of the First Baptist Church in Montgomery, and says they should bring the pastors together. And Abernathy says, you know what? There's this new preacher in town. He's only 26 years old. No one knows him. And if he gets chased out of town, no one will notice. And that's how Martin Luther King came into the movement. And they decided to host the first meeting in his church because if he got chased out and got bombed, it wouldn't bother anybody. Only one white pastor came to that meeting, Robert Grace, who happened to be Rosa Parks' pastor. And his home was bombed in retaliation for him supporting the effort. Edie Nixon's rival to run the NAACP all these years had been a man named Rufus Lewis, who was a business owner. And he was astonished that a working class person who he considered unlearned was running the local NAACP chapter. And they were rivals. And Rufus Lewis was concerned, as they were going to create this new organization, the Montgomery Improvement Association, that Edie Nixon was going to become the leader of it. And so he had an idea, what if he could control this young preacher and use him kind of as his puppet? So he promoted Martin Luther King as the leader of the Montgomery Improvement Association. That's how King became leader of that. And the first thing King did was appoint Rufus Lewis transportation chair. And King knew from another pastor in Louisiana that his father was friends with, where they had also done a bus boycott. This was about the 5th or 6th in the country, in the United States at the time. People think it's the first. That they had to transport people to and from work and school every day. And so Rufus Lewis organized a 350-car carpool that transported everyone to and from work, school, and church every week. Now, to pay for the gas, two women, Inez Ricks and Georgia Gilmore, created competing clubs of women who cooked food and sold it on Sundays to pay for the gas for the 350 cars and the tickets, because the police pulled them over constantly. And to raise additional money, Ellen Baker took Rosa Parks on a tour of the North to go to NAACP donors. The Hordens and Miles Horton and the Doers raised money among all the Highlander donors to support the effort. And then Bayard Rustin came to town. Now, the people who were opposed to the civil rights change kept saying this is the work of outside agitators. Bayard Rustin was an outside agitator. He was an openly gay communist who had been a pacifist during World War II. And he shows up in 1955, and he was a student of Gandhi and Gandhian principles. And he goes to Dr. King's house, and there's a man on the roof with a shotgun, another at the front door, and Dr. King's carrying a sidearm. And Bayard Rustin comes in and says, you're doing it all wrong. This could be the true test of Gandhian principles. And he starts working with Dr. King on how to apply Gandhian principles and do this as a nonviolent social change movement. And it was out of it that Dr. King stopped carrying his gun. And the first action that Rustin organized them to do was that the city had indicted over 100 members of the Montgomery Improvement Association. And Bayard Rustin's idea was that they would all put on their Sunday best and march down to the jail and turn themselves in. It was the first nonviolent civil disobedience in the movement. But Rosa Parks had been an activist in the NAACP for years. Her husband had ties to the Communist Party, so they decided her case was also not going to be sympathetic enough to win. And so another woman who had refused to move to the back of the bus, Maria Boynton's case, was taken by Fred Gray and used to strike down segregation, was the case that went all the way to the Supreme Court and ended bus segregation in the South. So the question is, who was the leader of the Montgomery bus boycott? Social change always comes from the leadership of the many. Joseline, in accepting her award, talked about that this isn't an award for an individual, it's an award for the community. And that is how change happens. And yet we love the stories of heroes. And we tell the stories of heroes. But when we ever dig into a social change effort, we find that change comes from the leadership of the many. And the question for any change effort is, how are we building lots of leaders? How are we helping lots of people use that leadership muscle? The other part of leadership is how. And the U.S. Army actually has the title of its leadership manual is Be, Know, Do. And the concept is, first I have to understand, who am I as a leader? What's my mission? What's my group's mission? What are my values? How do I work with others? And I have to master that before I gain the knowledge and the skills to achieve that mission. What I would argue is most leadership development focuses on knowledge and skills, and rarely it focuses on the be. Yet when you think of where leaders go wrong, it's not often that they're not smart enough or not competent enough to do the jobs. It's they don't have the character, they don't have the values. I'm not going to say anything more about the leader of this community, but I'll say in the United States, we see this constantly, where we see leaders who certainly have the competence and skills, but they don't have the values. They don't have the sense of culture. They don't have the character. At Public Values for the last 2 years, we've identified 5 values we think are essential for leaders today. And the ones I think will really exemplify the stories of the leaders honored here today. And I'd like to share a few stories to kind of illustrate that. First is Steve Ramos. Steve was someone who had dropped out of high school, who had gotten what he called his good enough degree, or the GED in the United States, which is a high school equivalency exam. And Steve never thought of himself as someone who was college-bound. He was trying to find a job and got a chance to work at a youth center in his neighborhood in Washington Heights neighborhood of New York City. And Steve one day found out that the church that had joined the youth center was closing a food pantry that had served the neighborhood for years because they didn't have enough volunteers and they weren't getting enough food. And Steve had an idea. What if the kids from the after-school program took over the food pantry? And they did. And in the first 2 years, the kids from Washington Heights, most of them for themselves, collected and distributed over 60 tons of food in the neighborhood. But not only that, the kids were staying longer in school. And the number of kids in the program increased. Today, Steve has gone on to get his undergraduate and master's degree, is now the CEO of the whole organization. And I titled the story something he joked. He said, Paul, it takes children to raise a village. And what Steve has done is created an organization in which all of their work in the community is engaging the youth of Washington Heights to serve the community of Washington Heights. And so every service they provide is now provided by the youth. They don't serve the youth serve the community. And in serving the community, the youth have become, their grades have gone up, the number graduating from school has gone up, the number of youth in his program has gone up. He changed the paradigm. They're not the problem, they're the solution. And what Steve sees is something that we often illustrate in terms of the proverbial question. Is the glass half empty or half full? And the answer Steve's come up with, which we've also come up with in 20 years of doing rigorous control group analysis of this glass, is that the correct answer is yes. That every single one of us in this audience, our awardees, all of our guests, and all the people we work with, we all have gifts and talents. We all have fullness that make us great family members, friends, workers, and leaders, but we also have emptiness. Mistakes we've made, regrets we hold, relationships that have gone wrong, things we're bad at. We all have both. But service is often about people who see themselves as full, going into communities that have been defined only by their emptiness, to help people who've only been defined by their emptiness with the notion that their job is to fill them. We think that at best it is arrogant and at worst it's oppressive. We think true leaders have confidence in their fullness and humility about our own emptiness, and that even when staring into someone's emptiness or a community's emptiness, our job is to find that fullness, to recognize and find ways for people to act and work and live in that fullness. And to us, that's what Steve does, and we think that is a powerful part of the leadership journey. And we think if you do that right, everything else works. The second is diversity and inclusion. Monty Allen has a form of Tourette syndrome where he often yells at people and swears involuntarily. Growing up was tough as a young black male in Cincinnati who, riding the bus, might start yelling at someone or swearing. He was teased and bullied a lot growing up, and he was told he would never be able to work with other people. And he was told his only chances of a career in the future were as a laborer. But it was in a wood shop in high school, in a vocational school he was attending, that his vocational teacher said, "You should go to college." And saw that Monty had incredible intelligence as well. Not only that, but work with him every day to make sure to do the work that other teachers wouldn't do with him to get him into college. And he went to the University of Cincinnati, but when he started out, things weren't going well. He'd been kicked out of classes, he'd been teased. He didn't think he was going to make it. And one day he was sitting on a bench at his school crying outside when a professor saw him and sat down next to him. And he told her his story. And she went to her dean in the School of Criminal Sciences there and told him about Monty. And he wanted to meet him. And he met with Monty and he called a faculty meeting. And he said to the faculty, "This is Monty's condition. We're going to help him get his BA. But here's the deal. This is what he does, and if you're not comfortable having him in your class, I will personally mentor him and work with him one-on-one independently to get those credits. But I need to know. But if you take him in your class, this is what might happen, and you have to let the other students know." And he said, I don't want you to give him any breaks academically. Monty went through, graduated, and things were looking promising. But a year out from college, again, he wasn't finding employment. People couldn't think of how to use him with the challenge that he had. And so he's working night security and as a stocking clerk at a store with his college degree. When he came into public allies, we formed a partnership with a group called the Free Store Food Bank in Cincinnati. And they interviewed him. And they said he went both sexual and racial in the screams that he had during the course of the interview. But Bob Littman decided, let's take a chance on this. We're going to break all of our personnel policies to hire this guy. But we're going to give it a chance. And what happened is they first started him in the back with food. And then slowly started having to work with people. But the deal was that he had to tell anyone he was going to work with that he has this condition and that he might start swearing at them in the course of working with them. And if they feel uncomfortable, he's okay with them working with someone else. What do you think happened? Everyone wants to work with Monty. Why? Because all these people are coming in for food, and you know their lives. They have great challenges. And they're used to going to someone for help who they see as perfect and who they see as judging them. And the first thing he does is disarm the entire power differential of service by sharing that he has this disability and this challenge. Not only that, but over time they find because he had to navigate living on disability and Social Security in the United States all these years, they didn't have expertise in that. Now he runs their whole Social Security disability area of the agency. And 4 years later, he's still employed there. And he's still Tourette's. He still swears, he still screams. But what Free Store Food Bank did was demonstrate what it means to be truly inclusive. And to see that sometimes in difference are assets you couldn't imagine that are there. When you take that chance, when you take that risk, and you hold yourself accountable and you ask, who's not at our table? What parts of our community are we not connected to? When we hold ourselves accountable truly to make sure that the tables our workforce are as inclusive as our communities, have the diversity that we need. And when we take those chances and recognize that sometimes that difference creates incredible assets we didn't know we didn't have until we found them. The third value is collaboration. Cleola Slater Harrington works for a group in Cincinnati called Strive, which has gotten a lot of attention around the world now for their work creating this collective impact model, which basically is based on the notion that they looked around for years and said, we have all these organizations doing all this work in our community, but community-wide the metrics don't change. And what collective impact has started to do is, in Milwaukee, where I live, for example, we had the highest teen pregnancy rate in the country for decades. Number 1 or number 2. And they finally brought all the groups who worked on teen pregnancy and worked with young people together and said, let's work on one strategy together. And the funding will go through this. And what they found is when they brought all the groups that worked on teen pregnancy together, they found most of them served young girls. And they decided, yes, there was another part of the problem. Not only that, but when they looked at the data together, they found that more than half of the teen births in Milwaukee, the father was over 18. So they found they had a problem no one was working on. And they created a collective approach. And in 7 years, they've cut the rate by more than half, and we're now below national average. And they're not stopping. And we've seen this in other cities. Khalilo leads this effort for Strive in Cincinnati. And they brought all these organizations together, and they've been working. They've changed citywide metrics in all sorts of areas, cradle to career with young people. But what Khalilo said was getting organizations to do this work. And it's an old saying from Peter Drucker, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. That you can have the strategy to collaborate, but if you don't create a culture of collaboration, it's not going to work. And she said it's about building trust and building relationships. And those teams that put the time into building relationships before they worked on the strategies achieve more than those who try to just work on the strategies. Collaboration is about how we work with others and how we build the trusting relationships necessary to do that. The fourth is continuous learning. And back about 7 years ago, a foundation in New York that funds, called Echo and Green, they fund social entrepreneurs around the world who are starting new organizations. And they'd asked me to come and share the story of how we build public allies with all their fellows. And I realized, I wrote the speech about how we did it and realized that wasn't going to help anyone. And so I created a presentation called The Worst Practices of Social Entrepreneurship. And I laid out the 10 biggest mistakes we had made in our first decade, the 10 do-overs I wish we could have. But before sharing this publicly, I thought I should share it with our staff. And it was kind of scary because the first slide was called Things I Suck At. And it was a list of all the things I do bad. And the reason why is because I realized that the first lesson as someone starting an organization was that if I had just owned up to what I suck at the beginning, it would have made people's lives a lot easier. And me trying to master things I was bad at, me not being clear I needed other people who were great at things I was bad at, me trying to pretend I wasn't bad at things or being defensive about it, created way more problems than anything else in the first several years. But putting this list in front of my employees was kind of scary, and it included things like interpersonal conflict, personnel management, patience with process, administrative paperwork, being punctual, small talk, active listening, trusting my instincts, delegating responsibility, making up, it goes on. So I put this list in front of my employees, and it was kind of scary. And then something happened. Everyone started nodding. And the reason why is your emptiness is as transparent as this class. The things you don't do well, if you always dominate meetings, if you always do things at the last minute, if you're always disorganized, if you're always micromanaging, everyone knows it. It's not a secret. And as a leader, we have a choice. We can own it, which creates the possibility that people will talk about it with us. They'll call us on it when we're doing it. They'll help us with it. Or we don't own it and they'll talk about it without us. And everyone does that, right? We do that. I can't believe they don't show up. We do that all the time. And the reason is because as leaders, we don't own it. And that's really all we have to do. And it's hard and it's scary until we realize everyone already knows it. But as a leader, as a manager, I struggle with this so much. Seeing people who are so afraid to admit they suck at something or they're not good at it. But we know when they do, it creates the possibility we can actually work on it. It lets us know why we need to be inclusive and collaborative because we don't have all the skills necessary. And just the simple act of owning it really changes our relationships with others as a leader. And the final value is integrity. And you know, integrity for us at Public Guys is about two things. It's about how do we be true to our being. When we're clear about who we are, what motivates us to do this work, why we do this work, what we want to do, and how we want to do it, when we're clear about that, we're much more grounded and successful as leaders. And when we can articulate that to others, it makes it easier for people to work. When they know why we do the work, how we want to do the work, and we're willing to be accountable for that, and what we want to accomplish, it changes the relationship. And so, but also we have to be accountable to those we work with and those we serve. And especially those we serve, because it's on their behalf we do this work. And so for us, integrity is about how do we be true to that be, and how do we hold ourselves accountable as leaders. And really, the core question for every leader is to really define that be. What are the values I'm going to practice? What are the ways, why am I doing the work I'm going to do? What do I want to accomplish? How am I going to do that? What are the values I'll practice while I do that? When we can articulate that and ask to be held accountable for it, it makes us much more successful as leaders. When we can't be accountable for that be, and we have to define that be, we're all over the place. I'd like to close by reading a quote that kind of sums up our work from Michelle Obama. Michelle was an employee of Public Guys, my organization, for many years. And what I can say is, we always knew she'd be doing these great things. We never knew she'd be a fashion icon. Because when I worked with her, she's one in the circle there, she was in sweats and jeans all the time. We have like 3 photos of her in dresses, and most of the time she was in blue jeans and stuff. And now she's like on the cover of Vogue. And so it's kind of mind-blowing because I never saw her that way. But she is a great leader, and when she became First Lady, she gave a speech about her experience that I like to read it again because it really sums up what I've talked about and the work that we've been doing for the last 2 decades. And she said, we all have skills and talents that make us good friends, family members, workers, and leaders, and we also have needs and shortcomings that come along with those strengths. We can't do well serving communities when we believe that we, the givers, are the only ones that are half full, and that everyone we're serving is half empty. That has been the theme of my work and community my entire life, that there are assets and gifts out there in communities, and that our job as good servants and as good leaders is not only just being humble, but it's having the ability to recognize those gifts in others and help them put those gifts into action. Communities are filled with assets that we need to better recognize and mobilize if we're really going to make a difference. At Public Guys, we endeavor to do this by bringing these young people together from diverse backgrounds. We work with African Americans, Asian Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, white, gay, straight, you name it, college graduates, ex-felons. We brought them all together every week to work in a group, and truly that's where the magic happened. When you saw these kids from all these different backgrounds really tussling it out and trying to figure out their philosophies in the world in relationship to their beliefs and stereotypes. The law school graduates realized they had a lot to learn about how communities really work and how to engage people. There's nothing funnier than to watch a kid who believes they know it all actually come across some tough community problems that test every fiber of what they believe. And then you saw that young person without a diploma realize that they could go to college because they were working with kids who are just as smart or not as smart as them who are going. And they gain a sense of the possibilities that they have. They know that their ideas are just as good, sometimes even better. That's when those lights go off. That's what we think of when we think of being asset-based, that a kid from Harvard and a kid with a GED are both full of promise. Everyone learns to build authentic relationships with one another where they can recognize each other's strengths and provide honest feedback on their challenges. They gain a blend of confidence and humility that prepare them to be able to lead from the streets to the executive suites. You can take any one of our allies and you can plop them down in any community, and they know how to build relationships. As I started out saying, The work of the honorees that I got to read about tonight was incredibly inspiring. And I want to first, again, just thank and congratulate you all for your incredible work. And as I said, you'll only learn what you already know. I hope that the ideas I shared tonight from our work at Public Allies and from the model we've evolved, I was sharing with Martin earlier when he came to me with the book, and I said, everything in it we've stolen. We really, the work that we do, we've learned from lots of others. And I think that if we had spent time with the honorees tonight, we would have written the same book. And we would have developed the same philosophy. Because the work you've done has been about how to lead with, how to do things with communities, not to communities or for communities. It's been about how to empower others to lead and step up. And it's to recognize that it's leaders working together that create change. It's not about individuals or heroes. And so while you all are individually heroes in a way and have done great work, it's because of your work really helping other people find and exercise their leadership. So I want to again thank you all for having me tonight. I want to congratulate the honorees. I want to thank 3M and Health Nexus for honoring these great leaders and for promoting this incredible work throughout Canada. And again, I leave here inspired by the work you've all done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much, Paul. It was a fabulous talk. It's fabulous to hear about your work about Public Allies. I encourage you to go and have a look at the website and the history in terms of the growth of Public Allies over, I guess it's over 20 years now. And yes, the connections to all the famous people like the current U.S. President and First Lady and their involvement with the organization and all the fabulous work that's been done. I think that it's so clearly presented, there's no need to summarize, but there's certainly some inspiring things. So there's certainly the one about feeding and exercising your leadership, I think was a great line, and also very apt and important. It's certainly reinforcing it very much as we make the connections to all the people that we're honoring here tonight and the whole sort of action of leadership rather than the position of leadership, I think was also very, very important as well. So there's many things I can go through, but I won't. Really like the focus on values and what that means. But again, we'll have an opportunity to have a conversation about it after we're all done here and keep talking and sharing our own stories. So, and Paul, I just want to reinforce that the books are over there, Paul will be over there, and obviously your opportunity to continue your own conversations with him as well. I wanted to thank all of those people who have here and the people who aren't here, maybe watching live here, for the people who have put forth nominations for leaders. This whole award program would not work without your nominations, so thank you very much. And certainly want to thank all the nominees and finalists, people who are here today, Darcy Barlow, Sid Franco, and Victor Willis, and obviously Justin Bernier, as well as the winner here today. So certainly your contributions to improving the health of our communities and obviously for your strong leadership. So thank you for the work you do. And I'm going to just pass it over to Jean-Pierre who will make a few remarks in French.
Thank you, David. Très intéressant la présentation de Paul, surtout si on se met dans le contexte canadien, non pas américain. Ici, la situation qui est vécue à Toronto avec un problème de leadership à l'échelle de la municipalité. Chez nous au Québec, avec une commission d'enquête sur les magouilles dans la construction. Ça fait du bien d'avoir un message aussi inspirant que celui qu'on vient d'avoir de Paul. Donc, des notions d'intégrité, des notions de mobilisation des citoyens. On est très loin, donc, de l'opacité, on est loin des magouilles, on est loin de tout ça. Donc, j'ai trouvé ça très inspirant. Et comme David l'a mentionné, à la fin de la séance, donc, Paul code va être disponible pour signer des livres s'il y a des gens qui sont intéressés. Merci à tous ceux qui ont pris le temps de proposer des candidatures pour être parmi les personnes qui ont été sur la liste des finalistes. Et aussi, évidemment, merci à tous ceux qui ont été les gagnants ce soir. Et permettez-moi un petit brin de chauvinisme. Je suis de Montréal, donc je suis très heureux que ce soit quelqu'un de Montréal qui ait gagné, Jocelyne. Donc, c'est un petit brin de chauvinisme, donc personne qui vient de Montréal. On a eu d'excellentes candidatures pour le concours. Et je profite aussi de l'occasion pour rappeler que c'est un concours qui continue. Donc, il ne faut pas hésiter. 2014, ça prend des nouvelles candidatures. Et je vous laisserai sur une petite citation qui vient de l'auteur du Petit Prince. Fais de ta vie un rêve et du rêve une réalité. Merci.
This does end the formal portion of our program. As I said, please stay and celebrate the finalists and Justin and Paul and others. The next call for nominations for our 2014 award will be out in March of 2014. So please start thinking about other leaders in your community that you'd like to nominate. Thank you for attending and celebrating with us and contributing to the dialogue and the event, and for all the work I'm sure that you're doing in your communities as well. We do have a separate award website, so if you haven't checked that out, you can get that via the Health Nexus website, or just looking up the Leadership Award. I did want to also give thanks to the people who have participated here. I want to thank Carla for your participation, and obviously Julian for the support. Suzanne Schwenger from the Health Nexus staff for also helping out with the award here, and for filling in for Barb, for Jean-Pierre as well for participating. And certainly to all the Health Nexus staff for the fabulous work in organizing the event and making sure it's run so smoothly. And a special thank you to Melissa Pogman, who tries to stay out of the limelight, but does a fantastic job throughout the whole year and for the event. So thanks to all of you. Happy holidays and safe travels, and I hope you'll all join us now to celebrate.